Hey guys, welcome to the video.
Today I'm gonna go over her lab list, and I'm gonna start off with the brain. Now the brain consists of different subgroups. In each brain, there's the telencephalon and the diencephalon. They both of them are also known as the forebrain. We then go to the midbrain, which just only consists of the mesencephalon, and then the hindbrain contains the mesencephalon. Oh, sorry, not mesencephalon. The metencephalon and the myencephalon. And then finally, it's not in the lab list, but this structure right here is the spinal cord. All right, starting off from the bottom again, this structure here is the spinal cord, right? Cool. Now with the myencephalon, the only one in the lab list is the medulla oblongata, which is the structure right here. I'm just gonna try my best to draw the structure. That right there is the medulla oblongata. Going over medencephalon, we have the pons and the cerebellum. The pons in this case is this little structure right here. Or actually, it's more like this. That right there is the pons, and then the cerebellum is this big structure right here. Going over mesencephalon, we have the cerebral peduncles and the corpora quadrigemina. The cerebral peduncle is this structure right here, just right next to the pons. Now with the corpora quadrigemina, this actually consists of two structures. So going over the first structure, I'm going to draw the whole thing. The whole thing is known as the corpora quadrigemina. However, there's a superior and an inferior. Now, the superior side right here is called the superior oliculi. And the inferior side right here is the inferior colliculi. Okay, now going over the diencephalon, we have the thalamus, hypothalamus, pineal gland, and the pituitary gland. The thalamus is this structure right here. And just underneath the thalamus is the hypothalamus right here. The pineal gland is kind of like on top of the thalamus. It's right there. And the pituitary gland is underneath the hypothalamus right here. Finally, we have the telencephalon. The telencephalon consists of the olfactory bulb right here, the corpus callosum right here. Now with the cerebral cortex and the cerebral hemisphere, I'm going to put a video right here explaining it since I can't explain it.
The brain is made up of two halves, known as cerebral hemispheres. When looking at the brain from a lateral view, which just means looking at it from the side, we will only see one cerebral hemisphere, but the landmarks I will point out are found on both cerebral hemispheres. The surface of the cerebral hemispheres is covered with a thick layer of brain tissue known as the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is folded to create more surface area, forming these ridges, known as gyri, and grooves, known as sulci.
All right, that should be it with the lab list. The next one I'm going to go over is the ventricles of the brains. Going over the ventricles of the brain, we have the lateral ventricles. The reason why it says lateral ventricles is because there's two of them. We then have the third ventricle right here, right next to the thalamus. Well, it's inside the thalamus. And then kind of like above the third ventricle is the choroid plexus. Choroid plexus. Now going down more this way, the red one is the cerebral aqueduct. And finally, we have the fourth ventricle. It's the orange one. And that should be it with the ventricles of the brain. The next one I'm going to go over is the cranial nerves of the brain.
okay, before I go over the cranial nerves, I forgot to go over the brain list in a coronal view, and let's just get into it. As you can see, let me just uncover the ones that's not on the lab list. So right here, the gyri, the sulci, and the hippocampus is not on our lab list. Okay, so going over the first structure, I think I went over this in the first few minutes of the video, but that structure right there, I'm not going to go fully over it, but just know that the outer part of the brain, that is known as the cerebral cortex. Okay. Now, the matter inside, well, like underneath the cerebral cortex, is known as the white matter. That right there is known as the white matter. Let me just uncover it. Okay, the next structure, this right here, let me try my best to draw this, or outline it actually. That right there is known as the thalamus. Thalamus. I keep getting confused. Something so long to cover it, dude. Okay, and then that structure right there. I drew this because it wasn't there, but that right there is known as the hypothalamus. So I'm just quickly draw it, whatever. That right there is the hypothalamus. Okay, that's pretty much it with the structures. Let's go over the ventricles now. So the first structure we have is the lateral ventricles. So this McDonald's sign looking ventricle is the lateral ventricle. So this side is the left side, and then this side is the right side. Okay, and then here, that structure right there above the third ventricle is somewhere here, going like that, right? This structure right here is the choroid plexus. It took so long to say it, dude. That right there is the choroid plexus. And then again, this structure underneath, and this as well, is the third ventricle. Cool. Okay, now going over the image that she provided in Canvas. This structure right here is, again, the cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex. And then this structure right here is the cerebral white matter. Cerebral white matter. This big structure is the thalamus. Thalamus. And then underneath the big structure, well, kind of like part of it, is known as the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus. Going over the ventricles of the brain, the structure or ventricle is known as the third ventricle. Okay, and then finally, there's two of them, right here and right here. That right there is the lateral ventricles. Okay, that should be it with the coronal view of the brain. Okay, with the cranial nerves, Dottenhoff wants us to know both the names and the number of the cranial nerves. And so yeah, let's just get into it. So if it asks you something to highlight, or sorry, to name a structure, and it's like up front in the brain, that right there is known as the olfactory nerve. Olfactory nerve. And then the number, in this case, in Roman numeral, looks like a I. Okay? And then the structure right here, going like that, that nerve is known as the optic nerve. Actually, I'm not going to restart the video. Let me just finish it. I'm just going to give you guys the number of it. I, and then here is the I. Okay. Now going over the third, it's called the ocular motor. The ocular motor is these structures right here. And then the Roman numeral looks like that. Okay, the fourth one is this nerve right here. That right there is known as the trochlear nerve. And then the Roman numeral is IV. The fifth one is these nerves right here. Those nerves are known as the trigeminal nerve. And then the number is just V. Or letter, sorry. Going over the sixth nerve, this nerve is known as the abducens nerve. The abducens nerve in this case is this one. And then the Roman numeral is VI. Okay, and then this nerve right here, that nerve right there is known as the facial nerve. And then the Roman numeral is VII. And then this nerve right here, the eighth nerve, this is known as the vestibular cochlear nerve, or it can also be known as the auditory nerve. And then the Roman numeral is VIII. This nerve right here is known as the glossopharyngeal nerve, and the the Roman numeral for it is IX. This nerve right here is known as the vagus nerve, and then the Roman numeral for vagus nerve is X. Okay, the 11th nerve is this, or these structures right here, and it's known as the spinal accessory nerve, and then the Roman numeral is XI. And then finally, this nerve right here is known as the hypoglossal nerve, and then the Roman numeral is XII 412. And that should be it with the cranial nerves. I'm gonna go over the real model right now. Okay. So as you can see, it's already labeled. This structure, let me use a different color so you can better see it. This structure right here, olfactory bulb. This structure right here, optic nerve. And then this structure right here, why is my Apple Pen doing that? This structure right here, ocular motor nerve. Okay, my bad guys, my thing cut for some reason. But anyways, going over the fourth nerve, which is this one right here. That right there is known as the trochlear nerve. Trochlear nerve. Then this nerve right here is the trigeminal nerve. Trigeminal nerve. This nerve right here is known as the abducens nerve. Abducens nerve. This structure right here is known as the facial nerve. The facial nerve. And then underneath the facial is, of course, the auditory nerve, or the vestibular cochlear nerve, but you can also know it as the auditory nerve. Okay, this right here is known as the glossopharyngeal nerve. Glossopharyngeal nerve. Underneath that is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve. And then this right here is known as the spinal accessory nerve. Spinal accessory nerve. And then finally, this right here is the hypoglossal nerve. Hypoglossal nerve. And that should be it. Okay, before I go over the arteries of the brain, I wanted to share you guys like a simple catchphrase of remembering the nerve names. Memorizing this is going to take a long time without having something to memorize it with. So a simple catchphrase can help. So the catchphrase that I made is, owls often overlook the trembling Arctic, flying above glaciers, venting soft harmonies. So that's my catchphrase that works perfectly fine for me. This catchphrase is all preference, by the way. This is just my personal. So again, owls often overlook the trembling Arctic, flying above glaciers, venting soft harmonies. Okay, so not only do we have to know the name of the nerves along with the numbers, the the cranial number, we also have to know if the nerve is sensory, motor, or both. A simple catchphrase that I got from Dodenhoff is, some say marry money, but my brother says bad boys marry money. So again, some say marry money, but my brother says bad boys marry money. Okay, cool. We also have to know the foramen of the nerve. So again, foramen, this takes us back all the way to Unit 1. Foramen means hole. It can be a hole anywhere from, like the bones to, whatever. Anyways, olfactory, that nerve passes through the cribriform plate of ethmoid. For optic, it's optic foramen and fissure. For ocular motor, it's superior orbital fissure. And then notice the sign that I drew right there. Actually, I typed. That's just me saying superior orbital fissure, but without me having to write it, because I am lazy. So for trochlear, it's also superior orbital fissure. So for trigeminal, it's superior orbital fissure, foramen ovale, and foramen rotundum. But during the lecture, Dodenhoff says we only have to know one of the foramens. So I guess it's best to use superior orbital fissure for trigeminal as well. For abducens, it's also superior orbital fissure. For facial, it's styloid mastoid foramen and the and the internal auditory meatus, which I represented with this sign. For auditory, you can find it in the internal auditory meatus. And then for jugular foramen, it's that sign that I drew right there, or typed again. Vagus is also jugular foramen. Spinal accessory is jugular foramen. And then finally, for hypoglossal, it's hypoglossal foramen. So I'm going to quickly draw this so it's easier to memorize. By itself, you have to memorize this, and then this, like that. And then these nerves right here, these four nerves, just know it by superior orbital fissure because it's easier. For facial and auditory, just know it as the internal meatus. And then with these three nerves, glossopharyngeal, vagus, and spinal accessory, just know it as the jugular foramen. And then hypoglossal is by itself. Okay, now going over the location. Olfactory is located in the telencephalon. Again, I went over this in the first few minutes of the video. Also telencephalon, mesencephalon, and then for trigeminal, it's located in the pons, abducens pons, facial pons, auditory pons, glossopharyngeal pons, vagus pons, spinal accessory pons, and then hypoglossal in the brain stem/medulla. Cool. Okay, that should be it. Okay, going over the arteries of the brain. I already wrote something here. Let me just erase that. Okay, going over the arteries of the brain, I drew it in a structure that looks like a guy raising his hands. But yeah, so as you can see here, this structure right here going inside, that structure right there is known as the vertebral artery. Vertebral artery. The vertebral artery connects to the basilar artery. Did I say that right? Basilar artery? Yeah, whatever. But that right there is the basilar artery. And then the arterial circle of Willis is this big structure all around. If I ask you like what artery this is, and then it's like pointed in the middle of here, that right there is the arterial circle of Willis. Before I continue, I want to say something. This yellow structure, I couldn't find the common carotid artery, so the closest one I could find was the internal carotid artery, which is this one right here. But I'm pretty sure that's not on the lab list. So, I really don't know. So you have to kind of like ask Daudenhoff regarding the common carotid artery, because this is the closest I can find, the internal carotid artery. And then that should be it with the lab list for the brains.